They call me Reena. Some go with Ree. My aunt insists on calling me Riri, which I tolerate because she's one of the few people who's ever treated me like I mattered. I was the second-born daughter in a family where firsts meant everything. My sister Vanessa is 8 years older, and if you asked my parents, they'd probably say she was born wearing a halo and a Harvard sweatshirt. From the moment I could comprehend my place in the world, it was clear I was the extra. We weren't trying, but here she is, child, our home. Basically a gallery of Vanessa's accomplishments. First steps, first trophy, first school award, framed, glossy, spotlit. Me, I was the shadow following her spotlight. Wore her old clothes, played with her outgrown toys, ate the leftovers of attention. By the time I hit middle school, I'd stopped trying to be seen. I mastered invisibility like it was an Olympic sport. My parents didn't mean to ignore me, I think they just didn't realize how much they did. Vanessa had this gravitational pull and the whole house orbited around her. She graduated early, won scholarships, got accepted into some prestigious internship in Boston. Suddenly, her life became the family's main plotline. And I was the background noise. I remember the day she came home during her senior year of college, practically levitating with excitement. "I'm engaged," she beamed, waving her hand like she'd won the lottery. Dad shouted, Mom cried, I just stood there. Vanessa turned to me, her eyes sparkling. "You'll be my maid of honor, right, Reena?" I nodded, I smiled, I lied. What was I supposed to say? No thanks. I'd rather not spend the next year being your unpaid assistant while Mom and Dad max out credit cards for your champagne and roses fantasy. Because that's what happened. I overheard them whispering about it that night. "We'll have to take out a line of credit," Dad said, voice tight. "It's Vanessa's wedding," Alex's mom replied. "We'll figure it out." Figure it out, like it was just numbers, not their retirement, not my future. Still, I stayed quiet, that's what I did best. The wedding was obscene. Doves, a string quartet, custom monogrammed everything. Vanessa floated down the aisle in a dress that cost more than my entire wardrobe combined. And me, I wore blush pink chiffon and a plastered smile. After the honeymoon, Vanessa dropped another bomb. She was quitting her job. "Evan makes enough for both of us," she announced one Sunday over waffles. "I want to focus on building a home." Mom looked like someone had told her angels were real. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." I swallowed my resentment along with cold coffee. Because apparently sacrificing your career after one semester of adulthood was now a spiritual calling. Then came the twins. Yep, identical baby boys. Cue full-blown grandparent hysteria. New furniture for their nursery. Diapers by the truckload, a house fund. That's when I finally said something. "You're helping them buy a house," I asked one night after hearing Mom on the phone with a realtor. "They need more space," she said simply, like it was obvious. "You're still paying off the wedding," I said, "and I'm about to start college. What about me?" Mom didn't even blink. "You'll figure it out." I did, sort of. I got into a local state college, nothing fancy, but it had a decent program. My parents pitched in what they could, half the tuition, they said. The rest was up to me. So I worked. Early shifts at a coffee shop, late nights at the front desk of a hotel. Sleep was a luxury. Friends, a fading concept. And just when I thought I might catch a breath, Vanessa turned up at our house with the twins in tow. "Reena, thank God," she exhaled, shoving a diaper bag into my hands. "Evan and I need a night out. You don't mind, do you?" Before I could answer, she was gone, just like that. And suddenly I was alone with two toddlers screaming in stereo. It became routine. Every Friday night, like clockwork, I was the default babysitter. No ask, no thanks, just assumption. "You need the practice," Mom said once as I struggled to calm a tantrum over a broken crayon. Practice for what I shot back, for living a life that's not mine. She just patted my shoulder, like I was being dramatic. I wasn't, I was unraveling. I didn't party, I didn't date. My fun weekends were spent elbow deep in peanut butter stains and storybooks. One Friday I cracked. Vanessa had barely closed the front door before I turned to my parents. "This has to stop," I said. "I'm tired. I have a midterm Monday and a shift tomorrow." "Your sister needs support," Dad said, not even looking up from his crossword. "And I need sleep," I snapped. Mom's tone sharpened. "Don't be selfish, Reena. You don't have children, you don't know how hard it is." I did know, because apparently I was raising hers. That night I made a plan, a desperate one. I booked a weekend at a cheap beach motel 3 towns over. Nothing fancy, but it had sand silence and no screaming. When I told my parents, I expected a fight, but they surprised me. "That's nice, honey," Mom said. "You deserve a break." I almost cried. But when I got to the motel, suitcase in hand, barefoot in the sand, sun melting my stress, I saw them. Mom, Vanessa, the twins. Surprised Mom squealed. I stared, speechless. "We thought you'd be lonely," Vanessa said, already pushing the stroller toward me. "Just watch the boys for a bit, okay? Evan and I want to take a walk." They were gone before I could protest. That weekend, it broke something in me. The boys destroyed the motel room. I lost my deposit. One flushed a juice box, the other painted the mirror with sunscreen. And when Vanessa had the audacity to say, "Ugh, traveling with kids is so exhausting," I snapped. We fought, loud, ugly. I packed, left them at the motel, took the first bus back home. I didn't say goodbye, because I knew, finally painfully, what had to happen next. I didn't go home to talk. I went home to pack. My hands moved on instinct, folding clothes, stacking notebooks, stuffing my life into an old duffel bag that smelled faintly like library air and cheap coffee. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. I wasn't going to yell. I'd already wasted too many words on people who didn't hear me. I was halfway through emptying my dresser when the front door slammed open. Reena Mom's voice pierced the quiet, sharp, indignant. "Where are you?" I didn't answer. She found me anyway, standing over my half-zipped bag. Her eyes narrowed as they took it in. "You can't be serious." "I am." My voice was calm, steady. "I'm leaving." "Leaving?" she repeated like the word was foreign to anywhere that isn't here. She folded her arms the way she always did when she thought she was being reasonable. "You're being dramatic." Vanessa's vacation was supposed to be a bonding experience. I almost laughed. It was supposed to be my vacation. "You're exaggerating," she said, shaking her head. "You've always been too sensitive." That line, the one that always silenced me when I was younger. This time I didn't let it. I'm not sensitive. I'm exhausted. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. "You've spent years pretending I'm just extra. Like I'm the bonus child that came with a receipt you lost." "Reena," she said, voice tight. "We love you?" "No," I cut in. "You love the idea of me, the useful me, the backup babysitter, the extra set of hands, the invisible daughter who never asks for anything." She blinked, for once speechless. That's when Dad walked in, phone still in hand. "What's going on?" Your daughter, Mom snapped, "is throwing a tantrum." I turned to him. "I'm moving out." He sighed like I'd just said the car needed an oil change. "Where are you even going to live with a friend?" I lied. I had no idea. But I'd figure it out, like I always did. "If you walk out that door, don't expect us to help with college anymore," he said flatly. The threat landed, but it didn't shake me. "You already barely helped," I replied. "I've been working 2 jobs to cover the rest." "We've done everything we could for you," Mom added, voice rising. "And what about Vanessa, who's going to help her with the boys?" That was it, the final tug on the leash they thought I still wore. "She has a husband," I said. "Let him help her." I zipped the duffel, slung it over my shoulder, and walked downstairs. They followed, still shouting. I didn't look back. When I reached the door, Mom tried one last card. "If you leave now, don't bother coming back." I paused, hand on the doorknob. My heart thudded, but I didn't hesitate. Okay. Then I stepped out. The sun hit my face like a dare. The air felt different, brighter. I didn't cry, I didn't panic. I just kept walking. The next few weeks were a blur of uncertainty. I crashed on couches, skipped meals, stretched every dollar. I posted on a housing board and found a roommate through a girl in my psychology class, Mel. She had a tiny apartment and an even tinier cat named Beans. The rent was cheap enough to scrape together with tips from my job at the cafe. It wasn't glamorous. My room was basically a closet with a window. My mattress was a hand-me-down, the Wi-Fi cut out if you stood too close to the fridge, but it was mine. No screaming kids, no forced favors, no emotional traps disguised as family obligations. For the first time, I felt free. I learned how to budget, how to stretch spaghetti for 3 meals, how to say no without apology. I studied hard, pushed through lectures on half sleep and caffeine fumes, picked up shifts wherever I could. I didn't go out, I didn't date, I didn't have time. But I had peace, and that peace was everything. I still saw Vanessa occasionally, her posts mostly. Picture-perfect mom life, coordinated outfits, hashtags like #blessed, #mom of twins, and always the comments from family and friends. Such an amazing mom, those boys are lucky. No mention of the weekends she vanished. No credit to the sister who picked up the pieces while she played house. Sometimes I'd scroll through her feed and feel the old ache, but I'd close the app and return to my own life. Quiet, hard reel. And slowly that ache faded. I focused on my classes, applied for scholarships. I found a professor who saw my potential and offered to mentor me. I started tutoring on the side. My grades climbed. So did my confidence. I began to feel like someone worth knowing, worth seeing. 2 years later, I graduated with honors. No ceremony, no family in the audience, just me, Mel, and Beans. We ordered takeout and toasted with discount sparkling cider. It was perfect. I got a job offer from a startup looking for content writers. The pay wasn't huge, but it was stable. Enough to move into my own studio apartment. White walls, wobbly floors. Mine. I furnished it piece by piece, secondhand finds, little plants, a desk from Craigslist that leaned slightly to the left. But when I sat at it to write, I felt grounded, like I was finally building something solid. Life settled into a rhythm. Work, sleep, weekend walks alone, slow, coffee books in bed. No screaming, no guilt trips, no last-minute diaper duty, just me. Free. One afternoon, I got a voicemail from Mom. "Hi, honey," her voice chirped. "It's your birthday soon. We're throwing a party, everyone will be there. Vanessa's bringing the boys. We'd love to see you." I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to hang up. Another part, a smaller, quieter part, missed them. Not for who they were, but for who I used to hope they could be. I told myself I'd go, just to see, just to measure how much I'd grown. I picked out a simple dress, brought a bottle of wine. The moment I stepped into that house, I felt the old weight settle on my shoulders. Same decor, same voices, same Vanessa glowing like she owned the air. The twins were older now, 7, maybe 8, loud, bold. Vanessa hugged me like nothing had happened. "Reena, look at you, so chic." "Thanks," I said politely. "You look great too." Lies, but harmless ones. Dinner was the usual chaos, the table crammed, kids yelling, adults swapping boring updates. I sat quietly listening, smiling, until Mom handed me an envelope with a grin. Open it I did. Inside was a glossy ticket and a folded itinerary. "It's a family vacation," she announced. "We're all going to Cancun next month. Flights, hotel, everything covered." Everyone clapped, even Vanessa. We thought it'd be nice to spend time together again. I looked at the ticket, then at the room, then at Vanessa's boys already smearing cake on the wall. I smiled. Then I said, "That sounds lovely." And just like that, I agreed. Not because I meant to go, but because this time I had a plan. I waited a week before buying my own ticket. Not to Cancun, though. I booked a solo getaway to a quiet coastal village in Portugal. Nothing fancy, just a modest inn perched above the waves, known more for its quiet mornings and cobblestone streets than its nightlife. A place where nobody knew my name or my history. A place I could breathe. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not Vanessa. Not even Mel. I wanted this trip to be entirely mine. When the day finally came, I packed light. 1 suitcase, a paperback, my journal. I arrived at the airport early like always. Vanessa and her entourage showed up fashionably late, dragging mismatched luggage and kids who already looked overstimulated. Evan was wearing sunglasses indoors. Vanessa had a Starbucks in one hand and a stroller in the other. "There's my girl," she beamed, spotting me. I smiled and waved. "Hey, Ness!" The boys rushed me, shouting something about snacks and pool floats. Mom fussed with passports while Dad barked instructions at no one in particular. Chaos. Pure, inevitable chaos. We moved toward the check-in counter together, the whole circus. Just as we reached the line, I winced theatrically. "Oh shoot, I need the bathroom. Be right back." Nobody even looked up. That was my chance. I slipped away, walked briskly across the terminal, found the airline desk for my real flight, and checked in. The clerk handed me a boarding pass and smiled. "Enjoy your trip." I almost laughed. I already was. I found a quiet corner near the gate and waited, sipping overpriced airport tea. My phone buzzed nonstop. I ignored it. 5 minutes before boarding, I texted Mom. Just one sentence. "Not coming to Cancun." I booked my own trip. I'll be safe. Don't call. Then I powered off my phone, took a deep breath, and boarded my plane. The flight was peaceful. No screaming kids. No forced small talk. Just soft music through my headphones and the slow, sweet drift of clouds outside the window. When I landed, the air smelled like sea salt and citrus. The kind of scent that makes your lungs feel new. I took a taxi to the inn. It was even better than the photos, whitewashed stone walls, blue shutters, and a rooftop terrace that overlooked the ocean. My room had a window that faced the sunrise. I unpacked slowly, savoring each motion. No rushing, no babysitting, no guilt. Just solitude. The first morning I woke to the sound of seagulls and waves. I drank coffee barefoot on the terrace wrapped in a linen robe. I didn't speak a word to anyone until noon when I wandered into the village for lunch. I ate fresh seafood and flaky bread. I drank wine without glancing at a clock. I smiled at strangers. Nobody asked me to change a diaper or explain my life choices. The second day, I wrote for hours. Pages and pages poured out of me memories, feelings, fragments of the past I hadn't realized I still carried. I didn't edit. I didn't censor. I just wrote. On the third day, I turned my phone back on. Dozens of voicemails, hundreds of texts. All the expected notes: Mom furious, Vanessa panicked, Dad confused. Evan didn't bother messaging me, typical. I listened to one voicemail from Mom. Reena, this is unacceptable. You abandoned your family. Vanessa was counting on you. We all were. What you did was cruel. I deleted it. No response. That was the first real power I'd ever felt. Saying nothing, giving no explanation, just letting them sit in their own choices. The rest of the week unfolded like a dream. I hiked cliffs with sun-bleached edges, swam in quiet coves, bought a necklace from a woman who made jewelry out of sea glass. I ate when I was hungry, slept when I was tired, laughed at nothing in particular. It wasn't a revenge trip, not really. It was a reclaiming, a declaration that my life belonged to me. On the flight home, I felt calm. No anxiety, no dread. Just a quiet certainty that I would never go back to being the spare. I landed back in the city late, caught a cab to my apartment. The streets were sleepy soft with early morning fog. My building was still. My keys clinked as I unlocked the door. Beans meowed in greeting. Home, safe, whole. The peace didn't last long. 2 days later, there was a knock. Loud, angry. I opened the door to find Mom and Vanessa red-eyed and fuming. How could you? Mom hissed, pushing past me without invitation. You embarrassed us. I embarrassed you, I asked calm. You left 2 7-year-olds in another country with no help. Vanessa shouted. They're your nephews. No, I corrected. They're your sons, and you were supposed to be parenting them. Mom turned toward me, voice full of accusation. We paid for your ticket. I never asked you to, I replied. And I never agreed to be the babysitter. You just assumed. Vanessa crossed her arms. We needed you, Reena. You've always needed me, I said, voice steady. But never once did you ask what I needed. That quiet hit them hard. For the first time, they didn't have a rehearsed response. You were selfish, Mom said finally. Maybe I admitted. But maybe for once that's okay. They didn't know what to do with that. They left soon after. No apology, no real understanding. Just bitterness and disbelief. And that was fine. I didn't need them to understand. I only needed them to leave. That night I lit a candle, put on music, ordered takeout. I curled up on the couch and watched the city glow through my window. I was alone, but not lonely. There's a difference. In the following weeks, I changed more than I expected. I stopped answering every text. I declined visits. I unfollowed family on social media. Not out of spite, out of protection. My peace had a price, and I was finally willing to pay it. I started seeing a therapist, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to stay whole. I talked about boundaries, about patterns, about being the spare part in someone else's story. I talked about how it felt to take up space for the first time and not apologize, though. And the more I talked, the more I saw clearly I hadn't just left my family. I'd left a version of myself that believed I owed them everything, that believed love was earned through service, that my worth depended on their convenience. That version of me was gone, buried in a beach town across the ocean. Good riddance. I had new goals now, a new job opportunity, a bigger apartment on the horizon, maybe even grad school. Dreams I'd shelved to be someone else's safety net were slowly making their way back to the front. And with every small step forward, I felt lighter, clearer, unapologetically me. I didn't know what the future held, but for once that uncertainty felt like freedom. It had been months since the confrontation at my apartment, since the tears, the shouting, the accusations, since I'd stood my ground and for once let them sit in the silence they were so afraid of. And as the seasons changed, so did I. I stopped flinching when the phone buzzed. I stopped waiting for approval that never came. The things that once defined me, obedience, guilt, that tight knot in my chest when I said no, were loosening their grip. I was learning the difference between being loved and being used. They don't teach you that when you're little. No one warns you that sometimes the people who claim to care the most will also be the ones who make you feel the smallest. You just grow around the wounds, calling it loyalty. But now I was pruning all the things that no longer serve me. Like dead branches, I let them fall. I leaned into my work. My team at the startup was growing, and so was my role. I was writing campaigns, managing deadlines, mentoring interns. My name was finally appearing in meetings where it mattered. People noticed when I spoke. They asked for my opinion. That simple respect, it changed something deep in me. I no longer had to beg to be heard. I just spoke and people listened. One Friday afternoon, as I was packing up to leave the office, I got an email from an old college friend, Jamie. We hadn't talked in years, but her message was warm, curious kind. She'd seen some of my writing online and wanted to reconnect. Said she was hosting a dinner party next weekend, nothing formal, just good food and better company. For a moment I hesitated. Social events used to drain me, especially ones where I didn't know what version of myself to be. But then I remembered I didn't have to shrink anymore. I could show up as I was. So I replied yes. That night, I picked out a simple dress, not too flashy, but something that made me feel like I had a story worth hearing. When I arrived at Jamie's place, I was early. She greeted me at the door with a glass of wine and that same easy laughter I remembered from school. Soon the room filled with people, artists, engineers, writers, teachers. Every corner buzzed with stories and laughter. I didn't hide in the background. I didn't check my phone waiting for an excuse to leave. I stayed. I listened. I laughed. And somewhere between dessert and midnight, I realized I was doing more than surviving. I was finally living. Over the following weeks, I said yes to more invitations. A book club, a hiking group, a weekend pottery class I had no talent for, but enjoyed anyway. Slowly, I was building a life that wasn't about obligation. It was about joy. Around this time, I got a message from Vanessa. Short. Just, can we talk? I stared at it for a while, then I replied, what about... She said, just... talk. I agreed. We met at a neutral place, a quiet park halfway between our lives. She arrived wearing sunglasses, holding an overpriced coffee like always. She looked tired. Not glam tired, but soul-worn tired. She didn't hug me. I didn't expect her to. We sat on a bench. The silence between us hummed. Finally, she spoke. I didn't come to fight. I nodded. Good. She looked straight ahead. You leaving like that? It messed me up. I didn't leave to hurt you, I said. I left to save myself. She nodded slowly. I know. I waited. She glanced at me. Do you ever think we just repeated what we were shown that hit harder than I expected? I thought back to our childhood, how she was always held up like a trophy, and I was the shelf she stood on. She was the star. I was the light switch. Maybe I said quietly. But it's not an excuse to keep hurting each other. I didn't mean to use you, she said. I just didn't know how else to cope. You didn't ask, I replied. You assumed I'd always say yes. She looked down. I'm sorry. That stopped me. Not because it was dramatic or emotional, but because it was simple. Honest. For once, no defense, no sugarcoating. Just, sorry, I didn't say anything for a while. The wind picked up, leaves danced along the path. Finally, I asked, why now? Because I'm tired, she said. Because the boys ask why you're not around. Because I miss having a sister. I sighed. The ache was still there, but it wasn't raw anymore. It was healed enough that I could look at her and not want to run. I'm open to trying, I said carefully, but it has to be different this time. I know. Boundaries, I added. No last-minute babysitting, no guilt trips, no disappearing and expecting me to fix everything. Okay, and if I say no, it means no. I can do that. We sat in silence again, not uncomfortable, just new, uncharted. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe we could build something better, not from nostalgia, but from now. After that conversation, things didn't magically get perfect, but they got better. Vanessa didn't bombard me with texts. She sent the occasional meme or a photo of the boys. No requests, just sharing. Our parents, though, they were a different story. They still called sometimes, mostly to complain. Still didn't really ask how I was doing. Still passive-aggressively hinted about family events. But now I didn't take the bait. I kept my responses short, polite, firm. I didn't explain myself, I didn't apologize. Eventually they got the hint, or at least they stopped expecting me to fold. One day Mom called and left a voicemail. "I saw your article in that magazine. You've always been a good writer." That was it. No mention of the past, no backhanded tone, just a sentence. I saved it, not because I needed it, but because it marked something. A shift, a small one, but real. And sometimes that's all healing is. Small shifts that add up to something steady, something honest. I wasn't the spare anymore. I was my own person, no longer waiting for permission to live. And with every step I took, I was writing a story that finally belonged to me. It was a quiet Sunday when the unexpected happened. I was curled up on the couch with a blanket and a bowl of pasta, half watching a documentary and half scrolling through job listings, not because I was unhappy with my current job, but because curiosity had become a habit. Then my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a while, Dad. Not Mom. Not Vanessa. Just him. I stared at the screen, the pasta cooling in my bowl. He rarely called me directly. Usually if he wanted to speak, Mom would relay the message or Vanessa would text on his behalf. I let it ring. Then I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, another call came in. Then a text. "Please, Reena, can we talk?" Something about the wording caught me off guard. There was no demand in it, no hint of manipulation, just hugging. I waited an hour before responding. "Okay, tomorrow. Coffee shop near Midtown." 10 a.m. I chose public space on purpose. Familiar territory. Neutral ground. The next morning I got there early. Sat by the window, ordered tea, and watched the city wake up. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked older. Not in the gray hair way, but in the posture and the way he moved like the world had weighed him down. He saw me and gave a small nod. No smile, no drama. Just quiet. He sat across from me. We didn't speak right away. Then he cleared his throat. "I won't keep you long." "Okay," I said, calm. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. Thick, sealed. He pushed it across the table. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here, and she'd kill me if she did." I didn't reach for it, just waited. I've been thinking, he continued, eyes on his hands, about the past. How we handled things, or didn't. He glanced at me. "We failed you." The words felt like a cold wind, not because they hurt, but because they were the truth I never thought I'd hear. We thought we were doing what was right, focusing on the child who seemed to need more. But we didn't stop to ask what you needed. I stayed silent, letting him speak. "I watched you grow up quietly, no complaints, no fights, you just disappeared into yourself, and we let you." Still, I said nothing. He exhaled. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know we don't deserve it, but I wanted you to have this." He nodded toward the envelope. I opened it slowly. Inside were a stack of checks, multiple, each one labeled with dates and notes, first-year tuition, spring rent, writing course. Thousands of dollars. I looked at him stunned. He saw the question in my eyes and answered before I could speak. "I started saving when you moved out. Told your mom it was for house repairs, but it was always for you." I swallowed hard. "Why now? Because I see what you've built. And because you didn't ask for anything, but you earned everything." I blinked back, a sudden sting in my eyes. "You didn't have to." Maybe not, but I should have a long time ago. We sat in silence, the kind that didn't ache, the kind that held space for something new. "Thank you," I said finally. He nodded. That's all I wanted to hear. We stood. He didn't hug me, just placed a hand on my shoulder. Then he walked out, shoulders still heavy, but lighter than before. I stood in that cafe long after he left, holding that envelope like it was a map I never knew I'd needed. It wasn't about the money, it was about the gesture. The first real one I'd ever received from him that didn't come attached to expectation or guilt. And in that moment, I realized something else I was healing, but so were they. In small, clumsy, late ways. And maybe that was enough. Later that week, I used part of the money to sign up for a writing residency I'd been eyeing for years. It was in the mountains, far from the noise, a month of solitude and creation with other writers. No deadlines, no meetings, just space to think, to breathe, to create. I told my boss I needed time off. She hugged me and said, "Go write the next chapter." So I did. The residency was like oxygen. The first night I stood outside beneath a sky so full of stars it felt like standing under a quilt of light. I wrote until my fingers cramped. Words flowed in a way they never had. Free. Honest. I wrote about sisters and silence, about invisible daughters and the ache of being seen too late. I wrote about forgiveness, not for others, but for myself. Halfway through the month, I got an email. A small publisher had stumbled across my blog. They were interested in my writing, wanted to know if I'd ever considered publishing a collection. I sat there staring at the screen, then smiled. Yes, I had. It all happened slowly as good things do. Meetings, edits, contracts. The book came out the following spring. It wasn't a bestseller, but it was mine. Titled The Quiet Sister. I sent a copy to Vanessa, another to Dad. I didn't hear anything back right away. Then one afternoon a package arrived, no return label. Inside was a framed photo, me and Vanessa, maybe age 6 and 14, sitting on a swing set. I didn't even remember the moment. But we were smiling. Real smiles. Underneath was a note, "Let's not lose this again." I set it on my bookshelf. Next to my book. A reminder of what was, and what still could be. I didn't forgive everything. That's not how healing works. Some things stay raw, some wounds fade but don't vanish. But I no longer carried them like anchors, I carried them like scars. Evidence that I survived, that I changed, that I grew. My life was no longer defined by being the second, the spare, the shadow. It was mine, fully, and finally. And I wasn't giving it back. Spring melted into summer, and the rhythm of my life began to feel like music again. Not background noise, not static, but something intentional. Something composed. The book didn't change the world, but it changed my world. Strangers sent messages, daughters, sisters, women who had lived in the corners of their families. Unnoticed, unheard, they wrote things like, "You put my life into words and I thought I was alone." I read every message. Some I responded to. Some I simply sat with, letting their truth soak into mine. It was a quiet kind of reward, the kind that doesn't come with applause, but fills you all the same. Vanessa called me more often now, never demanding, just present. She didn't talk about her struggles as if they were mine to solve anymore. Instead, she listened when I spoke, asked questions. She even came to one of my readings, sat in the back with her boys, whispering explanations to them as I shared a chapter aloud. Afterward, she hugged me. Not a performative hug, a real one. We never talked in detail about the past again. We didn't need to. It was like we both agreed that silence, when chosen, instead of forced, could be sacred. Our parents didn't change overnight. They were still them, rigid, prideful, complicated. But small things shifted. Dad called every few weeks just to check in. Mom started sending recipes, old family ones I remembered from childhood. No guilt, no manipulation, just food like a quiet offering. I accepted what felt healthy and ignored what didn't. I no longer burned energy trying to change them. I didn't need their full understanding anymore, just their respect. And bit by bit, I got enough. One afternoon, I sat on my balcony watching city lights blink like fireflies. Beans slept beside me, twitching in some imaginary chase. My phone buzzed. It was an invitation to my high school's 10-year reunion. I almost laughed. 10 years already. A different life, a different me. I clicked RSVP before I could talk myself out of it. I didn't want to go back in time. I wanted to see who I was now, standing in a room where I used to disappear. The night of the reunion, I wore a simple black dress and red lipstick. I didn't bring anyone. I didn't need to. The gym looked smaller than I remembered, decorated with cheap banners and nostalgia. Old classmates milled about, clutching drinks and memories. Some recognized me immediately, others blinked twice. "Reena, wow. You look different." I smiled. I am. I walked through the room like someone who had earned her place in it. I laughed. I danced. I didn't shrink. I didn't apologize. And when someone asked what I did now, I didn't downplay it. I said, "I'm a writer." Later, I stood near the photo wall, scanning old snapshots of teenage awkwardness and borrowed confidence. There was one of me and Vanessa back when she was still the center of everything, and I was learning to survive in her orbit. I looked at that photo and felt no anger, just clarity. We were kids doing our best inside a system that had no idea how much it was breaking us. That night I walked home under a sky thick with stars and questions. And I felt light. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally whole with or without their permission. Weeks later, I was invited to speak at a local women's retreat. The theme was reclaiming your voice. I stood in front of a room full of women, most of them strangers, and I told my story. Not the dramatic version, not the revenge plot, just the truth, messy, raw, and real. I talked about being overlooked, about learning to say no without guilt, about walking away not to hurt people but to find peace. When I finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then came the applause, not loud but powerful, the kind that lands in your bones. Afterward, a woman my age came up, eyes glassy. "How did you know when it was okay to choose yourself?" she asked. I thought for a second. Then I said, "The day I stopped waiting for someone else to give me permission." She nodded. I could see it click for her. A spark. That's all it takes sometimes. Just one truth spoken aloud. Later that year, my second book was published. This one wasn't just mine, it included essays from women I'd mentored, stories of reclamation and resilience. I titled it No Longer the Spare. It felt right. I dedicated it to the girl I used to be, the one who kept quiet, who gave too much, who thought love had to be earned with silence. I also dedicated it to my future self, because healing isn't a destination, it's a direction. Vanessa sent me flowers when the book came out. A simple note. For every time I didn't see you, now I do. I cried when I read it, not from sadness, but from relief, like something had finally landed in its rightful place. My life now is not dramatic, it's peaceful. I still work, still write, still drink too much tea and leave books stacked by the bed. I go to sleep knowing I'm not waiting for someone to choose me. I've already done that. I visit Vanessa occasionally. The boys are older wild in the best way. They call me Aunt Reena and draw me terrible stick figure portraits I hang on the fridge with pride. Sometimes Mom and Dad join us, sometimes they don't, and that's fine. We're not a perfect family. But we're learning slowly, awkwardly, honestly, and that to me is enough. I don't tell this story because it's unique. I tell it because it's not. There are so many of us, quiet daughters, middle children, invisible girls taught to take up less space. But I hope if you've read this far, you see what I see now. That there is nothing noble about being invisible. That peace is not earned through pleasing everyone else. And that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. So if you're still waiting for a sign, let this be it. Your voice matters. Your boundaries are valid. You do not exist to be the background of someone else's life. You are not the spare, you are the story. Story 2. I'm 31-year-old Nate, and I've always been the supporting cast member of my own family. Honest yet not resentful. I was the trustworthy one. The one who fixes things. The person who made silent payments without creating a commotion. My brothers and I never vied for attention. When I picked up the check or took time off work to assist someone with moving or recovering from surgery, I never made holidays about me and never thought anybody would notice. I just completed it. I was brought up that way. Avoid requesting praise. Simply act morally. The main attraction was my 2-year-old sister Camilla. People gravitated toward her like sunflowers because of her constant magnetic pull. She wasn't mean. That's right. She was skilled at taking advantage of others, particularly myself. Her grin has the ability to disguise a falsehood as a praise, and I allowed her to get away with it for the most of our lives. It had taken a year to plan Camilla's wedding. A nightmare brought to reality by Pinterest. Handwritten name cards, pastel flowers, a string quartet, you name it. And who in your opinion covered the expenses when her fiancé's relatives abruptly withdrew their contributions? Sincerely yours. I didn't laugh when she referred to me as the investor as if it were a joke. When I sent $8,000 to get the photographer she had been lusting after since high school. Mom stated they were tight, so I remained silent when I volunteered to pay for the honeymoon airfare. This month, Camilla gave me a glance that seemed to be anticipated. I didn't save the receipts because I wanted to impress them, but because I secretly still thought that if I worked hard enough and donated enough, perhaps just possibly they wouldn't view me as a spare component. A week prior to the wedding, the change began. In addition to working with the photographer and completing the honeymoon payment, I've also been writing the speech Camilla pleaded with me to deliver at the rehearsal dinner. However, little remarks then began to appear. Camilla remarked nonchalantly over the phone, "Oh, Nate, perhaps don't wear that navy suit." "So it's a little depressing," Mom said. "Try not to attract any notice. My dear Camilla is deserving of the limelight." I dismissed it with a giggle. Something about the tone resonated with me, but it was old habits. It wasn't a joke. It was a surgical procedure. The message arrived 2 days before to the wedding. No salutations. Not a warning. On my phone, there was only a neat small bubble of letters that read, "Don't even bother coming. You'll destroy the pictures." For a whole minute, I gazed at it. I thought I could have misread it, but it was indeed that. I took my sister to prom in a hailstorm when her date failed to show up. Over the course of 2 years, I assisted the woman with 3 moves. I was told I wasn't welcome by the bride I had spent thousands of dollars assisting. Not even due to anything I had done, just because I may detract from the aesthetic. It was not even the wording that twisted the knife. Underneath it was the notice. A message was liked by Mom. I made the click. It pleased her. I received a note from my mother telling me not to attend the wedding. It might as well have been a smack in the face, that tiny thumbs up icon. I didn't answer. Not right away. I did not make a call. I didn't shout. I simply sat in my flat and gazed at the wall. I reflected on all the occasions I had neglected myself. I paid for all of the birthday dinners. I would assist in navigating all of the emergencies. For what purpose? To be honest, I would destroy the pictures. I inhaled deeply, got up and made his way to my desk. I opened my laptop. I emailed the photographer first. "Hello, this is Nathan. I will no longer need your assistance on Saturday. Since my account was used to make the payment, I would want to proceed with canceling. Verify receipt, please." It took them less than 20 minutes to react. "I'm sorry to hear that. The refund will be processed less the deposit." The deposit was irrelevant to me. I then canceled the flights I had purchased for Camila and her fiancé to Santorini after logging into my travel app. I used my own credit card to pay for them. Refunds have been handled. Still no word. Still at ease. However, something more profound had broken. It was more of a revelation than a vindictive one. They didn't see me as a brother or a son, a prop, a wallet, or someone whose disappearance would be significant. I began to reflect about things that I had ignored for years. How Camilla used to call it taunting when she made fun of me in front of her pals. My mother once told me this following a difficult breakup. Well, it was difficult to adore you. I told myself it was simply relatives being direct, so I swallowed it all. But I saw it for what it truly was that night. Disdain disguised as familiarity. I didn't respond to the SMS, remained silent. I wanted the stillness to be felt by them. I wanted them to notice something was wrong as soon as they entered the arena. Not immediately, like a fog sneaking in slowly. The speech is no longer there. The photographer disappeared. The honeymoon was called off. I wasn't finished yet, though, not even close. I traveled to my dad's old house the following morning, which is currently rented to a buddy from my early years. In the back, he still maintained a storage shed. A dusty plastic bin with old family mementos, pictures, films, and even some of Camilla's early artwork was also found inside. Some of the less flattering ones I borrowed. For example, when she was 10 years old, she wore the notorious dolphin costume for her photos from the Braces era. Then to liven up the photo area they had prepared for guests around midday, I went to a nearby print shop and had a couple blown up into elegant small posters. I delivered them under the alias Camilla's Memory Lane to the venue coordinator's office. No address for return. It was only a loved relative's surprise sticky note. Neither Mom nor Camilla have responded yet. Don't apologize, no phone call. I seem to have vanished from the world. However, it was the problem. Silence was taken to imply surrender. They were unaware that I was only waiting and observing, allowing the cracks to appear because it just takes one person to step back for the entire house of cards to fall apart when everything you've worked so hard to build is dependent on the money and labor of others. And it was just a matter of time until everything fell into place. Like any other Friday, I went into the workplace the day before the wedding. I didn't clear my schedule or take any time off. I signed contracts, responded to emails, and grinned at my coworkers. But like a commander seeing a change in enemy formation before to an assault at noon, I was following every move they made inside. My phone pinged me with a group message. It seems that Camilla had not taken me out of her oversight. I'm positive. Camilla, a little update for everybody. At the last minute, the photographer had to cancel. Something like an emergency. Please get in touch if you know someone decent. We're in a hurry. Do you need someone by tomorrow? It was there. The initial shudder. I read it 3 times. Drinking my coffee as though it were wine. And then another message, half an hour later. Camilla. Does anyone know the status of the honeymoon flights too? According to the site, the reservation is no longer in effect. I'm going to lose it if this is a glitch. I felt the tightness in my chest loosen up a bit. Still, it wasn't satisfaction. It was clear, but not quite. In a long time for the first time. I didn't get lost. I wasn't trying to figure out what went wrong or how to make things better. I was seeing those who had taken advantage of and rejected me gradually come to the realization that I would no longer tolerate them. I didn't respond, didn't offer assistance. Speculation began to erupt in the group discussion. Brandon, her fiancé, once asked if the photographer received full payment. The question was disregarded by Camilla. I assumed he was unaware that I had covered the most of this. I think they told him I was only assisting a bit. The problem with people like them is that lying comes effortlessly to them, even to those they claim to love. My mother called at 5 p.m. She had taken that generic smiling shot back in 2000, and I gazed at the computer while her name rang. After hovering my thumb, I hung up the phone. Awaiting the voicemail, I waited. She left no one behind. Then a text 2 minutes later. Give me a call, Nate. Camilla is becoming nervous because of the confusion around the flight arrangements. We must speak. Nervous. I'm not lost or apologetic, just nervous. For example, if I were an IT specialist and they reported a system issue, I would have to address it that evening. I made dinner for myself. Real mashed potatoes, asparagus, and steak. I placed my phone on quiet, lit a candle, and poured a glass of wine. I finally felt like I had some control over my own tale as I sat in my little apartment and listened to an old CD that I hadn't heard in years. The wedding took place the next morning. I didn't go. Instead, I strolled to the park, got a coffee from the bakery down the street, and put on a cozy sweater. The environment was still, the air was clear, and I felt alone. Not upset, not resentful, just finished. Then my phone buzzed once again at 10:11 a.m. Liam, my cousin. Hey bro, did you call off the honeymoon and photographer? What's going on? I answered plainly. Yes, I did ask Camilla. Why? He answered. She's crying. The planner is being yelled at by your mother. It appears as though Brandon wants to run into traffic. Nothing else was typed by me. I just witnessed a dog chase a bird while locking my phone. I checked Instagram a couple of hours later. One of those black text on white backdrop story updates was what Camilla had shared. Not everything goes as planned. We are grateful to everyone who came and supported us on this incredibly unexpected day. I adore you all. There was a mix of general support and mild misunderstanding in the remarks. You still have a lovely appearance. I hope your day was still fantastic. I'm forward to hear the tale eventually, haha. The comment on the one picture she shared of her and Brandon at the church entryway, which was obviously shot with a guest iPhone, was what really caught my attention though. Crop granny off-center. Strange, in spite of everything. Hashtag just got married despite all the odds. Are you saying that it would be disrespectful to the one person who is paying for half of your ideal wedding? It was a weird moment. I would have given anything to be a part of that day a year ago. In order to assist her realize her goal, I would have stood next to her smiling for the cameras and made the speech of a lifetime. I didn't feel as though I had missed anything anymore. I had the impression that I had finally awakened up. It wasn't over though, because my doorbell rang at 8:07 p.m. I had no expectations. I scanned the crowd. Brandon was the one, unreadable expression, crooked hair, and a tie. After a single knock, he moved away. He seemed worn out, not angry, not perplexed. Slowly, I opened the door. He gave me a blink. Can we chat, please? My face remained motionless as my gut constricted. Aren't you two on your honeymoon? His mouth tightened. Yes, regarding that. When I opened the door for him, everything began to go apart more quickly than I could have predicted. Brandon entered my flat with the cautious intensity of someone who has realized too late that he may have chosen the wrong team rather than with the ferocity of a man entering enemy territory. He looked around admiring the simple arrangement books that were piled on the end table. The unopened wine glass from the previous evening was still on the kitchen counter, and there was a lone plant withered in the corner. I pointed to the couch. He took a leisurely seat. For a few seconds, his hands gripped between his knees were silent, allowing me to speculate as to whether he was practicing his response or working out how to say it without coming under suspicion. Then at last he spoke something. He responded in a hushed voice. I didn't know. Nate, I vow to you. I had no idea that you were covering any of the costs. I arched an eyebrow. Not a bit. He gave a head shake. According to Camilla, your donation only covered the photographer's deposit. That's all. She informed me that the flights were being paid for by her uncle, that he gave us the honeymoon as a present. I reclined in my seat. Have you ever inquired? He let out a sigh. Yes, I did. She would occasionally shift the topic, I assumed. I'm not sure. She was under stress. Marriages are chaotic. I took a while to reply. A little but vocal part of me wanted to release every little detail, every phone conversation, every receipt, and every subtle barb I had swallowed. However, I could see by the way his fingers tapped impatiently against his knee that he was already unraveling. His eyes were getting redder. He wasn't just worn out, he felt shook. He cleared his throat. I wanted to come here personally, even though I know we don't actually know each other that well. She is. She's having a complete breakdown. She believes that you were spiteful and spoiled the wedding. Out of spite, I laughed a little without amusement. Or because I was warned that I would taint the pictures. Brandon flinched. I noticed the wording. She was sobbing on the bathroom floor with her phone open. I read it. Until you just stated it, I had no idea your mom enjoyed it. She didn't believe that I would genuinely retreat. None of them did, I said. That's the issue. He gave a hesitant nod, allowing the words to linger. He leaned forward after that, knees on elbows. This morning she made a statement. He mentioned this when we discovered the flight confirmation was missing and the photographer had failed to show there. She was in the midst of it, screaming. She simply did. She spoke without thinking. He was never meant to have this big of an impact. That one struck a different chord. I shouldn't have been shocked. However, seeing her fiancé say it out loud made it more real than it had ever been. That's what she said, I inquired. His eyes were filled with what appeared to be guilt, sorrow, or both, as he nodded. It wasn't even malevolent intent on her part. She didn't really comprehend how things might go wrong without you, more like. I exhaled deeply through my nostrils. He cautiously added, and your mom. She has been encouraging it all. Camilla didn't want to completely ignore you. She was simply upset. The photographs were meant to be petty and short-lived. Your mother assured her that if she remained firm, the situation would be resolved. Something cooled down in my chest. It wasn't rage, no more. Something more subdued. Resignation. Perhaps it was a confirmation of what I had suspected for years but had never dared to question. Camilla had always been preferred by that mother. That she considered me a resource to be exploited, not valued. That she thought I would always return. Pay always. Never stop forgiving. Hold the line, she instructed Camilla. Brandon stated. Said that she would be creating a risky precedent if she caved into you right now. When she said it, I laughed not with laughter, but with disbelief. As though I'm a young child attempting to get a cookie before supper. Brandon gave a nod. A thin line of lips pushed together. You would still have turned up if you truly cared, she added. They were revising the story in real time, of course. I could almost hear it. Nate was self-centered. The day Nate made it about him was ruined by Nate. Don't worry about the money. Ignore the stillness. Forget about being viewed as an afterthought for years, until someone required my bank account. Brandon got to his feet. Look, I have no idea what will happen next. Camilla isn't talking to me at the moment. She's in the bathtub weeping. Additionally, your mother is holding the wedding planner responsible for everything. However, I didn't want to abandon it in this state. I wanted you to know that this was not how I wanted our marriage to begin. I cocked my head. Do you still believe it's beginning? He was surprised by that. He hesitated and blinked. I'm not sure. I was taken aback by his candor, but that was to be expected from someone whose illusions had recently been destroyed. Then he took a tiny envelope out of his pocket. In her planner, I discovered this. I believed you needed to own it. He gave it to me. The speech I had drafted was inside. Camilla requested the one I wrote weeks ago, but I never acknowledged it again. Notes were scrawled in the margins and underlined in the print. Make this section more humorous. This is too sentimental. And more about her. I grinned coldly. It felt good to know that I was being edited. Brandon looked at me like I was a sheep. I apologize, Guy, for everything. I didn't respond. I sat on the couch after he departed and looked at that speech for a while. It seemed as though the words were someone else's. Someone who is still holding out hope that years of harm may be repaired by a few pleasant words. However, I was no longer that person. My phone buzzed once again as the sun sank below the horizon, illuminating my room in orange hues. Camilla. One call, then another. A voicemail followed by a text. I hope all is well with you. The pictures are terrible and everyone is wondering where the photographer is. Brandon refuses to speak to me. You will regret what you did and I am aware of it. I hung up the phone without answering. I have no regrets. Not by any means. It was 3 days later. I didn't pick up any calls. Failed to respond to any of the messages. The next morning, Camilla texted once again. Something about how I had wrecked her life's most significant day. However, later that evening, a piece on family forgiveness and treachery was followed by a statement that sounded eerily like it was written by Mom. "Your point has been made. Stop behaving like a kid now." I wasn't expecting Brandon to follow up, but he didn't. He had fulfilled his obligation. He was honest. I'm not sure what went on between them behind closed doors, but I had a feeling that things weren't going well based on the quiet from his number. He no longer stood up for her. He wasn't standing up for them. However, the knock came on the 4th day. The doorbell, no. A simple knock. Out loud. Brief. My mother was right there when I opened it. Crossed arms and a tense face. She wasn't invited in, just rested on the entrance blocking structure. She didn't hold off on talking till I did. "Your sister vomited up because you made her weep so much." She was mortified when I gave her a stern look. We had to explain to everyone why there were no official wedding photographs taken. The reason for delaying the honeymoon. "Why did you not attend to Mom? Why wasn't I there? I cut you off." Crossed arms. She blinked, obviously not anticipating resistance. "Due to an SMS message that angered you, you were offended, so you ruined your own sister's wedding. Stay steady, my bites. Oh, say it," I urged. "I wasn't invited, therefore I didn't go. Camilla warned me not to come, so don't distort this. Do you like the message?" She averted her gaze for a moment. She only flicked her gaze and straightened her shoulders once again. Clearly that was an exaggeration. She was under stress. She didn't mean it, as you knew. "Did you not mean it?" "Once sharp." I laughed. "Do you appreciate the message she sent me saying that I would damage the pictures? Mom's stress isn't that?" I give that a thumbs up for cruelty. She stood up and shifted. "This is what you usually do. You make everything seem dramatic? No. Everything used to be internalized by me. I lost my temper. When you disregarded my birthdays, I didn't mind. When Camilla made fun of me in front of her friends, I didn't mind. I ignored it. You claimed that I was difficult to adore. I ignored it all. However, you went too far this time. And the only reason you're here is because the ideal little wedding for your golden kid didn't work out." She clenched her jaw. "Do you know what's wrong with you? In everything you want to be the victim. Supporting your sister alone was not an option. You have to focus on yourself." I gazed at her. What do you know? I thought so once. That if I simply paid the bills, worked hard, and kept silent, perhaps I will one day be sufficient for this family. However, I eventually figured it out. I was never a son to you, only as a resource, and now that I've turned off the faucet, I'm acting selfishly. She flushed. I no longer cared if it was out of humiliation or rage. "You're going overboard?" Quieter now, she repeated herself. "No," I responded in a calm yet decisive tone. "I've finished responding. I'm tired of being the last person to accept responsibility for the faults of others. Since it was my decision, I called off the honeymoon. I paid every dime, therefore I canceled the photographer, and I didn't show up since I was advised not to. Not sabotage, that is. Compliance is that." She parted her lips, then shut them again. I took a step back. "Nate, you ought to go. Proceed." After hesitating, she left without saying anything else. I took out a manila folder from my file cabinet that evening. All of my financial contributions to the wedding, including receipts, wire transfers, hotel reservations, airline tickets, and the photographer's contract, were contained within. I composed a brief letter, printed copies, and scanned them. To whom it may concern, the bank statements and receipts for all services and costs incurred for Camilla's wedding and honeymoon are included. As you can see, I am the only one paying the $8,000 to the photographer, the $4,200 for the honeymoon airfare and hotel reservation, and the $1,600 for extra costs for decor, food extras, and transportation. In all, the bride and family requested that $13,800 of my own assets be spent. In good faith, all costs were covered, with the understanding that I would attend the event. Later, I received a text message telling me not to go. I formally request that my name not be included in any story on the alleged ruining of the event, without explanation or apology, as I have chosen not to seek legal action. I just retreated. I didn't wreck the wedding. Nathan, good luck. My mother, Camilla, and Brandon all received copies by mail, and as a precaution, I also sent a copy to my aunt, who was often hosting holiday meals and had a tendency to unintentionally bring up family gossip in front of 30 people. It was clean, surgical, and factual with no drama. It was 2 weeks later. No answer. Camilla then shared a picture on Instagram without any fanfare. She was sitting on a seat by a lake with Brandon. Don't use hashtags. No hearts. Just the words "starting fresh" in the caption. That meant nothing to me. Did they still have each other if she was attempting to fabricate a tale? For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to get back in, therefore I didn't care. I wasn't anticipating an apology or a flimsy reconciliation over phony smiles and Christmas champagne. I was finished. That closure allowed me to make the last choice I had to make. After years of covertly paying for my parents' cell phone contract, I phoned my bank and had the last automatic payments canceled. Since Camilla couldn't live without it, they all kept my card's Amazon Prime account active, even though I had never utilized the streaming service. Apparently, they could get by just fine without me. They would now. The last wave of group text called Family Chat buzzed across my phone the next morning. Camilla. Could you please fix the phone plan? Nate. Inactive mom is what it says. The internet is giving us all trouble. Have you made any changes? I glanced at the screen. My silence was more powerful than any response I could have ever given. I departed from the gathering. I never got another communication after that. And somehow it felt more like releasing myself than it did like cutting them off. Not from them, from the me that persisted in attempting to prove himself to those who had already determined that he was worth no more than his credit limit. Their sibling was not lost. Their personal ATM was gone. Finally, I was at peace and didn't get an invitation to return. Story 3, $200. My mother responded, "That's it," as she opened my present. Your uncle received a whole dental package from your cousin. $6,000. Cool, I said. That's why my backup card disappeared. The family has decided, my sister remarked, tossing her napkin. You have 2 weeks to depart. That night I did not flinch. I shut down all of the connected cards, marked the lease as violated, and informed the bank. Everything changed when a hefty envelope addressed to my parents appeared in the mailbox in the morning. Mom's birthday was that day. It had 2 meanings in our home: silent judgments and costly presents. Chelsea has been earning 6 figures as a corporate lawyer ever since. Everybody sought to outdo each other with price tags at these strange auctions that had become birthdays. Years have passed since I gave up, but this year I genuinely believed I had something promising. Melissa came to my aid. She promised to create something unique and operates a tiny jewelry store 2 towns away. Tiny sapphires set in a pair of sterling silver earrings. The birthstone of Mom. Elegant, easy, jewel. I made ends meet by working as a freelancer and selling some old items on the internet. Made $100. Melissa knew I was trying and broke, so she paid the remaining $100. I closely observed Mom's face when she opened the box. After about 3 seconds of staring at the earrings, she glanced up as if I had given her a scratched DVD. She said it with a strange giggle as she cocked her head. $200, that's all. Thank you, but no. No grin. That's all. And quiet. Chelsea instantly weighed in, having previously made a big show of presenting Mama with a Parisian luxury perfume set. Uncle Frank received a whole dental kit from Ryan. Mike 6 big actual family gifts, not art projects in high school. Cool, I said. That clarifies my credit card situation. Nobody inquired about my meaning. They were aware that I had over $800 in dental costs on my card a week prior. That card is only ever used for emergencies and rent when I'm overdue on payments. I was aware that it had been seized by a family member. Only one of the 3 individuals with access has a history of taking things without asking. I was holding off on bringing it up until the perfect time. This must have been it. Dad kept his eyes on his dish. Melissa averted her gaze. No one spoke, but my aunt shuffled uneasily in her chair. Then, as she was handling evidence, Chelsea got up, folded her napkin precisely, and spoke as if it had been practiced. You have 2 weeks to leave, the family has decided. I didn't laugh aloud or in jest, just enough to let them know that once everyone had gone to bed that evening, they couldn't frighten me. I started working, changed all the passwords, canceled all the shared subscriptions, stopped all the credit cards, and reported fraud to the bank. Dad likes to say he paid for the digital news subscription, Apple Music, and HBO under my name. No more. I took out the leasing agreement after that. When I returned home, Dad had asked that I sign it, despite the fact that I was his son and after being fired, had nowhere else to go. The clauses were circled by me. They broke the written papers, the eviction procedure, and the termination notice. After that, I scanned it and stored 3 copies of it, one to my backup drive, one to my laptop, and one to a flash drive that I concealed inside an old Altoids tin. I got up early the following morning, went to buy coffee, and then returned to open the mailbox. A big envelope with their names scrawled in strange wobbly script and no return address was there. I kept my hands off of it. As if it were not my concern, I simply dropped it on the kitchen counter. My phone rang at 11:07 a.m. She didn't say hi, Mom. What is this? All she said was that. She should read it, I said. I hung up after that. I didn't stay to see them unfold it. I went down the block to the petrol station and sat on the curb outside with a blueberry muffin that had most likely been cooked before the epidemic and a cheap cup of coffee. In our area, it was too quiet for a Saturday. It was perhaps the first time since I moved back in that I had truly felt at ease. The home was quiet by the time I returned. The type of quiet that indicates someone has read or stated something. That was unavoidable. From the counter, the envelope had vanished. The kitchen was deserted. I closed the door behind me and walked to my room. After around 20 minutes, Chelsea knocked. She pushed the door open without waiting for an answer. In one hand, she held the envelope as though it were a summons from the court. Where did you purchase this? I didn't respond. Did you not forge this? I simply shrugged. There was a printed letter from a lawyer in the mail. It appeared to be a single neat piece of letterhead. Formal vocabulary. It said that the homeowners had broken my lease and that I would be seeking either housing reinstatement or a small claims lawsuit for damages including emotional anguish and verbal agreement violations. Just legal enough to frighten those who have never dealt with attorneys outside of traffic court. Nothing intimidating or unlawful. The finest aspect. It was not a genuine letter. It had been authored by myself. I filled in the blanks, formatted it correctly, and printed it out on that thick resume paper I had saved from when I was still searching for jobs using one of those online legal templates. Even a fictitious case number was included. Panic struck quickly. My parents were whispering to one other in the living room. They were making phone calls. Uncle Frank most likely, or even an old buddy who was a real estate agent. They were unsure about what to do. They were unsure about its veracity, and I had no intention of explaining it. About lunchtime, Chelsea returned more composed this time. If I wanted to chat, she asked. No, I said. She then began inquiring as to whether I had actually closed the credit card. I informed her that I had, that the bank was looking into the charges and that anyone who used it without authorization would probably be contacted shortly. She remained silent about that. Dad knocked on my door the following day, for the first time in weeks. I was asked whether we could meet as a family. Unless someone offered a $6,000 dental plan for me as well, I remarked I wasn't interested. I discovered Chelsea sitting by herself in the garden that evening. This time no wine. Her phone and herself. She questioned my sincerity about bringing a lawsuit against my parents. I informed her that I had no intention of suing anyone. All I wanted to do was tell them that I wasn't a doormat. She gave a nod. Then she said something that caught me off guard. I made use of your card. Prior to starting this new employment, I wanted the work completed. I intended to repay it. That was it. Don't apologize, that's all. That's stealing, I said. I know, she said. To be honest, I had no idea what I was going to do next, so I kept it a secret from her. Not quite yet. However, the envelope had served its purpose. They were all now anticipating my next move. My family's problem is that they are adept at acting as though nothing occurred until it becomes impossible. The energy in the home changed after the envelope. I wasn't expelled by them. I was not allowed to remain there. They just stopped discussing it at all. Like I may vanish if they ignored me for a long enough period of time. However, I didn't. Chelsea began acting strangely the day after she came clean. Not at fault. Strange, tactical, strange. She quietly hinted that the new job had perks brought home, takeout put leftovers in the refrigerator with my name on it, and perhaps she would help Mom have that crown replaced. All surface-level remedies for long-standing issues. I said nothing. I kept my hands off the food. I left the peace offerings alone. I worked quietly on my freelancing portfolio and applied for remote jobs outside of the state while I was in my room. I had no intention of staying. I just refused to be forced to leave on their conditions. Then everything got out of hand. I received a call from the bank a week later. They verified that the clinic's name matched Chelsea's and that the charges were reported as fraudulent. What did that imply, I asked? An investigator might get in touch, they said. After saying, thank you, I hung up. I kept it from Chelsea. Melissa came over that evening. She was aware that something had happened. Her mother called to see whether she believed I would actually follow through. Melissa just informed her while laughing, he will if he says he will. If you don't want the full hornet's nest, don't poke, Mike. After supper, we sat on the porch outdoors. She asked, you want to scare them a little more? Bash a must mate, after smoking half of a cigarette and crushing it out with her heel. Yes, I replied. She then assisted me in writing a second letter. This one was unlawful. It was intimate. A detailed list of all the things I had paid for over the previous 6 months that they had utilized, including food, shared utilities, and streaming services, as well as a formal request for repayment of the credit card costs. $6, $243.76 in total. It was mailed certified. Chelsea stopped visiting the house 3 days later. Then a friend of Mom's at the bank called. They had apparently heard that anything was being investigated. Not yet, not formally. However, the tension blew out. Without my presence, they arranged a family meeting. Later, Melissa informed me about it. Dad wished to put things right. Silently. Mom wouldn't admit they had done anything wrong. Chelsea texted Melissa not to send her mail since she was staying with a friend. After that, I found an envelope hidden behind my door. Not sent by mail. It was a typed letter with no handwriting. It came from Dad. It's not an apology, just a summary of what I would receive if I consented to leave and refrain from taking any legal action. $3,000. Aaron. Draft apology. A reference letter for upcoming rental applications that is not signed. When I read that, I chuckled. I then presented it to Melissa. She did not chuckle. Make them pay it all, she added, glancing at me. Every single dime. However, I no longer desired their money. Not at all. I had other desires. Something I hadn't received since returning. I wanted to be seen as more than a failure. They gave me the impression that I wasn't a needy person. That I was valuable. Even if I weren't Chelsea Ryan or any of the other people with hollow hearts and six-figure presence. So, instead of filing a lawsuit, I thought of something better. They wouldn't have anticipated it. I then began to make plans. I had lost my anger. Not quite. It had changed into a cooler substance, something targeted. I was unwilling to quarrel or yell. I didn't want to compose lengthy, dramatic articles online or bang doors. I wanted them to experience it like I had subtly, gradually, and unavoidably. I got the idea after discovering the family stuff folder which had been neglected on my hard drive. Years worth of files were within. I created a slideshow for Grandma's funeral. Chelsea's scholarship essay template. When Dad tried to rent out the lake house, I filled out the rental applications for him. They expected me to perform certain things, therefore I did them without hesitation. That since I never asked for anything, I would always say yes. I thus created something. This time there is no legal danger. Not a joke, a presentation, a keynote of the highest caliber. I made use of what I owned. Timestamps, receipts, messages, screenshots, and my personal bank statements. I dug far deeper than I had anticipated. And what began as a moment to rant evolved into a thorough examination of my stay in this place. First slide, unnoticed contributions, the family intern who did not be paid. A calendar with dates dating back 5 years was displayed on slide 2. I have babysat on occasion without being asked. Tech support, editing resumes, subscriptions that I own. I didn't make any dental expenses. Then a breakdown occurred. All the money I'd spent since returning home, all the favors I had given. Every line that someone else has crossed. Then I had a thought. I didn't send out a formal invitation. I just booked a meal. It's just a group SMS. I'll pay for dinner. 7 p.m. on Sunday. Only family. If they attempted to skip, I told Melissa to support me. The food was prepared by her. I organized the living room as a conference room and cleaned the house. Rented a projector. The windows were blacked out. Get a screen ready. The seats were arranged. They all showed up. Chelsea too. She arrived last. Remained silent as she entered. Until the dinner arrived, she simply sat and browsed through her phone. During supper, nobody spoke. Just little coffees and clinking silverware. We finished our meal, so I got up, turned on my laptop, and turned down the lights. At first, I said very little. The presentation has just begun. First came slide 1, then slide 2. I took my time. I was slow. I described everything. I was not pleading for pity. I wasn't even requesting cash. I was demonstrating to them the price of being disregarded, silently taken from the hours I had allotted and dismissed. The fact that I had been treated like a burden while they exploited my resources and the subscriptions I paid for without hesitation. Slide 12. At slide 19, Chelsea raised her head from her phone. At slide 25, Mom shifted uneasily. By slide 30, Dad stroked his forehead. Nobody spoke. There was only one sentence on the last slide. I learned from you to have no expectations. I therefore discovered how to measure everything. I then walked out of the room. Didn't request input. Avoided glancing at them. Simply left. Melissa's is where I crashed. That night, we didn't speak much. All I wanted was some peace and quiet. At midnight, my phone began to buzz. Chelsea, you're correct. I had not before noticed it. We owe you, I realize that. I apologize, that is insufficient. But I do mean it. Come home, Mom. I'd like to make this right. I didn't answer. I woke up early the following morning and returned home to get dressed. The projector remained operational. On the kitchen counter on side 30, someone had halted it. Dad's handwriting was on a note. When you're ready, give me a call. However, that wasn't the surprising aspect. The envelope that was waiting for me on my bed was the unexpected portion. Simply said, no return address. In blue pen is my name. There was a $6,243.76 check made out to me inside. I'd specified the precise amount in the second envelope, the one they never recognized. Just the check, no explanation, no message. All of a sudden, things felt different. I sat on the side of my bed and gazed at the check for an hour without touching it, as if it could explode if I looked at it incorrectly. $6,243.76. The precise figure, neither more nor less, not a word. Don't apologize, only the number. The money wasn't the only factor. It had never been. They had been paying attention, though, since they had observed the presentation. Not just listened, but also calculated, as shown by the fact that they drew the check, typed it, signed it, and left it in my chamber in silence. And the first was that. Without notifying anyone, I divided the check into the envelope, folded it in half, and walked out of the home. Entered the city on a train. Opened a new checking account at a bank none of them used, and walked 10 blocks in the bitter cold. After that, I crossed the street, got a coffee I didn't need, and sat by the window observing passers-by who were unaware of my situation. It was pleasant. That night, Melissa and I stayed together. She prepared spaghetti and left me alone without asking any questions. She was always able to leave room without creating a sense of separation. She gave me a note with an address in her clean, meticulous handwriting the following morning. I have a buddy who owns an upstate cabin. They'll leave you alone. I only needed it. I just brought my old laptop, a few sweatshirts, and the drawing pad I hadn't touched in a year, leaving my desktop at her house. There was only a wood fire, a cot, a dripping sink, and the sound of unidentified birds when I arrived to the cabin. There was no Wi-Fi or service. It had been years since I felt so alone. When I eventually slept through the night after 3 days, I realized how much I needed it. I was there for 2.5 weeks. Every few days, I created and distributed employment applications from the local library. I didn't spend much time on my phone. I didn't overlook it. I ceased to consider what I ought to have said or done. It was sufficient that I just existed. Then on day 18, I decided to check Instagram when I was in town getting groceries. A picture of Chelsea and her mother sitting outside a little bistro with ivy growing on the walls was shared online. No arrogant postures, no filters. Just them appearing worn out but genuine. We're learning each other slowly, the caption said. To be honest, I spent more time looking at the picture than I would want to acknowledge. Dad sent me an email that evening, shortly. No nonsense. On Sunday, join us for supper. No performances, no speeches, only us. We'll pay attention. I took a while to respond. Took 2 whole days. I'll come, but I won't be the same version of myself you're used to, I responded. It took him 6 minutes to reply. We are aware. We want you there for that reason. Sunday arrived. Around 6 o'clock, I pulled into the driveway after driving down from the cabin. Nobody showed up to greet me. No Chelsea was waiting with her arms folded on the porch. No mother looking out the window. Only the table is set and the porch light is on. The first thing I noticed as I entered was the stillness. Nor uncomfortable, nor tense, just silent. The table was devoid of wine, no presents, no phony grins. It was Chelsea who got up first. No embrace, only a slight nod. A glimmer of anything approaching reverence, perhaps acknowledgement. Mom also remained silent for a while. She just approached, put a kind hand on my shoulder, and then returned to her chair. That was all. I sat there anticipating a prepared speech, a half-apologetic, half-condescending address. Rather, Dad said, we didn't see it, clearing his throat. Everything, however we ought to have. We're responsible for it. Then for once they paid attention. I told them everything. How much animosity had accumulated, how long I had been exhausted, and how their silence over the years had eroded any remaining trust. I didn't hold back, I didn't mince words. Nobody spoke up, nobody made an effort to clarify. When I brought up the automobile, Chelsea gave me a direct look. Once again, she denied it. Simply stated, I paid it back. It does not, however, remove it. I am aware of that. No guilt trips, no showmanship, just a single wipe of Mom's eyes. Just a steady, gentle nod. Not everything was resolved by us, not in a single night. However, something took place. The wait changed. Additionally, I didn't feel as though I was dining at a stranger's table for the first time. After that supper, I didn't think anything would change. To be honest, I thought they would feel better. As though they had crossed off a box labeled emotional reconciliation, and then things would gradually return to their typical passive-aggressive pattern. 2 days after the meal, they surprised me, even though I had previously planned to return by the end of the week. In a text, Chelsea expressed her want to meet alone. Something forced me to go, even though I nearly disregarded it. Halfway between her house and mine, we met in a coffee shop. When I got there, she was already there. Hoodie hair pulled back, no makeup. She wasn't the person the outside world saw. Across the table, she gave me a little envelope. It was a duplicate of a wire transfer receipt from the dentist office. She had used her personal funds to pay it off in full. Then she made a statement that surprised me. Since before your lecture, I have been attending a therapist. It was only the last thrust. For me, I had to be better than I was. For you. I didn't say anything since I didn't know what to say. I just folded the receipt, nodded, and tucked it into my pocket. The first surprise was that, a week later, the second one arrived. I didn't recognize the number that called me. Something urged me to answer, even though I was on the verge of leaving it on voicemail. The man's name was George Harper. According to a real estate agent, he was assisting a customer who wanted to remodel and sell local residences. Dad had mentioned my name. My dad reportedly informed him that I was brilliant with digital marketing, budgeting, and mathematics, and that I knew how to make anything appear value without lying. George wanted to offer me a 3-month short-term remote well-paying job assisting with house preparation for listings. I stole it for me, not for my father. Then my mother did something that nearly made me pass out. She launched a blog. Yes, Mom. The woman who had to phone me before she could attach a PDF. She started a blog on midlife relationship repair. She made a new call. It was occasionally a little untidy and unpolished. Too honest. However, it was genuine. She mentioned me by name in her second post, but it was obvious that it was about me. She referred to me as the voice I had long since ceased hearing, and the mirror I was scared to look in. She composed. I mistakenly believed that having a child made me a mother, but it turns out that the true time I became a mother was when I learned to apologize. I remained silent, didn't send an email, I just signed up. Melissa also read it. That evening, she sent me an SMS. I cried when I read your mom's blog. Do we inhabit a parallel reality? Perhaps we were. I didn't return home. I didn't begin making daily calls. However, I returned for Sunday supper. Then Thanksgiving, followed by the following one. I still had occasional arguments with Chelsea, but it was different. More rubber bullets, fewer knives. And one evening following a peaceful meal during which nobody mentioned anything noteworthy or terrible. Almost as an afterthought, Mom turned to me while I was assisting her in clearing the table. Today I mailed you something. The application process for a job. Accidentally arrived at the residence. I hadn't mentioned the location anywhere, so I froze. Not since I was gone. What was it? She gave a copy to me. 3 months prior, I had applied to a nonprofit and she had printed a letter from them. Portland-based full-time benefits coordinator for community involvement. Their address was visible when I glanced at the address line. Due to the fact that I had neglected to update one of my freelancing CV, I had an interview for the one my father had helped me prepare years prior. The second packet was given to me. This one is smaller. There was a picture inside. 6-year-old me displaying a handmade birthday card. Mom was giggling beside me. On the reverse side, she had written, "This was not always the case. Let's avoid it once more." And I did trust her for once.